So this here's a painting video for the Daemon Prince of Slaanesh that we kit bashed in a previous video, which we'll link in the description. Anyway, we used the bottom of the Cockatrice as well as the top of the Daemon Prince model itself, and then we added a few extra parts and bits and things we had around, and we ended up what you see here. So if you like this, or if you had already seen the kit bash video and you want to see how it's painted, feel free to stay tuned and we will show you how we painted this guy up. And in any case, if you like what you're seeing, please feel free to leave a comment or like the channel or subscribe to the channel or like the video. And aside from that, we will see you in a few minutes when we show you how we painted this up. So this is our painting video for our Daemon Prince of Slaanesh that we had kit bashed with the other half of the Cockatrice kit, as well as the Daemon Prince, and then a little bit of modeling here and there. So what we've got here is our model, and we're going to paint it up Slaaneshi colors. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this Fiend of Slaanesh as our color guide for how we're going to paint this current model here. So you'll find a video for the Fiend of Slaanesh on the channel, if that helps, if you have fiends and you need to paint them, or if you just want more detail on this. In any case, we will get started on our Daemon Prince. So the first thing you'll notice is that it is primed, and it ended up primed with Wraithbone, just because I didn't have any Corax white, but I wasn't planning on using contrast paint, so Wraithbone wasn't really necessary. Just a light primer is good, because with the purple skin color, what we're going to do is we want that as light as possible. So Corax or Wraithbone, just a light base coat is where we started from, and we'll move on from there. But for all of the skin, what we're going to use is we're going to start with a base coat of Daemonette Hide, and we're going to sort of paint that over the chest, the arms. We're going to do the front of the tail here, as well as the fingers and the bones, protrusions, the phalanges of the wings, if you will, and probably the end of the tail. We'll see how that goes. So we'll start doing that now with our Daemonette Hide, and we'll meet back here. With our watered down paint, we're just going to start applying it all over the skin. And don't worry if it's a bit messy, we're going to do a lot of other colors on here. So we'll keep doing that, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes when it's all finished. So this is our model now that we've finished with the Daemonette Hide. And so now we're going to move on from there, and we have two choices. So what we could do is we could do the rest of the base coat for the wings, as well as the snake tail. The problem with that is they're going to use two different shades, and then they're going to take two different dry brushes, and the dry brush over one may cover the other one, and then we have to fix based on dry brushing. The other choice is to finish the Daemonette skin completely, and then come back and do the darker area, painting over any dry brush mess that we make, which is probably what we're going to do. I'm not sure which way is the correct way, but we'll do it this way for now. So, moving on from our Daemonette Hide, what we're going to do is add a shade to everything we've painted so far. And with that, we're going to do some Druchii Violet, and that'll help shade in all of these little bits here, add some context and some definition, and then we'll move on from there with a highlight layer. So we're just going to take that Druchii Violet and start coloring in, just like so. Pushing into areas we want detail on, getting away from the areas we don't. So we'll do that for now. We'll meet back here in a few minutes when that's all dry to add a dry brush highlight to it. This is our model now that we finished with the Druchii Violet shade, and as you can see, it got a lot darker, but all of the detail in the ribs and the abs and the snake points here and all the compartments all get a lot clearer. The wings get a lot more detailed here. Don't worry, like I said, if we made a mess, that was the whole point of doing it in this order. So now what we're going to do is we're going to lighten it back up. And with that, we're going to do a dry brush of Slaanesh Grey, which is a much, much, much lighter color. And that'll help us bring a highlight back to the model here. So as you can see, we're just dry brushing that lightly over the high points of the wings here. I'm going to do it over pretty much everything. And that'll get us close to our final color. And it's hard to tell how bright it is because it's sort of matching this unpainted section here, but it'll stand out as we go. So we're just going to dry brush this just like so. And we're going to do pretty much the entire model. And then we'll meet back here again afterwards and you'll see the big difference between them. So this is our model now that we finished with the Slaanesh Grey. And as you can see, it's really highlighted it all back up. But we've still got all of the detail in amongst the wings and amongst the plates and amongst the fingers and things like that. So it's pretty much just your typical base, shade, and highlight. So what we're going to do now is before we put the last highlight on here, we're going to start working on the darker parts of the wings and the snake skin. Because that way if we do go over, we can fix it with this middle layer instead of having to go over a middle layer and a highlight. So what we're going to do for this stuff, the space in the wings and that kind of thing, is we're going to start with a base coat of Naggaroth Night, which is very, very dark. And we're going to start putting it inside all of these extra spaces. We'll probably do the hair as well. So we'll start working on that now. We're just going to start painting in there with our darker base coat. And this time we have to be careful not to go over the wings. And we're putting a nice thin coat on this time. It may take 2 coats to get what we want. But in any case, this one's going to be the time-consuming one. So I'll keep doing this. And we'll meet back here when it's all done. So here's our model now that we finished with our Naggaroth Night base layer. And as you can see, we've filled in as much as we could here. Don't worry with the dark colors if there's little specks that are open, because what ends up happening is our shade fills that in, and there's just no way to get it without going super, super heavy on the paint. So our next step we're going to do now is shade all of our dark purple, and we're going to use a Nuln oil to make it even darker. So we'll do that now. So I'm just going to take the Nuln oil, trying not to go over the skin that we already did, the light purple. Definitely go over all of the dark purple, and that'll help fill in some of the details there as well as add an extra darkness to it. So we're going to do all of the wings as well as the hair, as well as the spikes and the snake background and all that stuff. So we'll do all of that now. We'll meet back here once it's dry. So this is our model now that we finished with the Nuln oil shade on the purple. So what we're going to do now is a combination of 2 highlights. So we're going to do Warpfiend Grey as a final highlight layer to all of the skin. And then we're going to do Xereus Purple as a dry brush highlight to all of the dark purple. And that'll further separate the 2 colors out. We're also going to take a little bit of that Xereus Purple and just do the cloth here and the back side of the cloth on the inside there, just because this tabard is going to be that darker purple. So we'll fix that up now, and we'll meet back here again in a few minutes. So this is our Xereus Purple. We're just adding a dry brush right over the wings to bring out some of that purple color. So we'll do these, and we'll meet back here again in a few minutes. So this is our model now that we finished with the Slaanesh Grey and then the Warpfiend Grey highlight. And I'm still finding it a little bit dark, so what I'm going to do is a very, very dry brush of Pallid Wych Flesh just to add a little bit more highlights to that. So even though that was a final highlight, I think we're going to go one more. So we'll do that now, and we'll be right back. So here's our model now that we finished with the Pallid Wych Flesh, and what we've done is really brighten it back up again. We didn't do all of the model, we just sort of did superficially the top, everything looking down, the starts of the big arms, and then the underside a little bit here as well, leaving some darkness and some lightness depending on where it's at. So for now we'll leave the skin as it is, and we'll see how we feel afterwards. What we're going to do is start on the armor, and there's not much to do here because most of the model is demon, but there's a chunk of armor here on the gauntlet, on the forearm here, as well as one here. And what we're going to do with that is a little bit of, I guess, Abaddon Black is what we'll use, and then we'll put some gold and silver trim on it. So we'll take a little bit of Abaddon Black and start coloring some of the armor. We'll also do the belt here, and that way we can start putting in the little belt stones and things that are on it, and any other details on the model that we want to add that are black we'll do right now. So now that we're finished with our Abaddon Black, what we're going to do is take a little bit of Eshen Grey and add a little tiny bit of a dry brush highlight to the black, like so. Just add a second tone to it there. So we'll do that for the black areas. We'll meet back here in a few minutes to move on from there. Now that we're finished with our Eshen Grey, what we're going to do is start on the metallics. So that's the chainmail here, as well as all of these tubes and cords that are coming around this vent that's here. Probably the blade that's over here as well. So we're going to hit most of that area there, and we're going to do all of that starting with a base of Leadbelcher. Start working on that here. And we'll just carry on like that and keep going till we're finished. So here's our model after we finished adding the metallics. So we did all of the hoses, as well as the blade that's on the shoulder here, as well as the hoses on the other arm here, and we did the vents, and then the chainmail on the front. So what we're going to do now is add some trim to the armor, the demon face here, as well as trim to the other gauntlet over here. And all of that we're going to do with some Retributor Armour, mainly just to add a little bit of color to the model because it's looking very purpley silver, and we want to add a little bit of something to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of that, and we're going to go across the trim that we've got here. Just like so. So we're going to travel along the trim doing all of it around, and we'll be back here in a few moments. So here's our model after we finished all our gold trim, and as you can see we've added a little bit of color now. Before we do any shades on this, we're going to go one more key component here, one more color. We're going to take a little bit of Rakarth Flesh, and we're going to do the horns, as well as the spikes on the wings, the large spike on the hand, the couple on the arm, the ones on the tail. There's a few skulls in and around the base. We'll do all of that with some Rakarth Flesh as a base, and then we'll start working from there. Doing a nice watered down layer. We're going to start doing these horns. Just like so. So we'll keep going with this. And we'll meet back here again when we're all finished. So here's our model now that the Rakarth Flesh horns and things are done. So as you can see, we've got a little bit more color. So we're going to start adding some shades to all of this stuff now. So we're going to do the gold and the horns with some Agrax Earthshade. So we'll do that now and start to bring out some of the detail there. And then afterwards we'll Oh, and we'll do the skulls down here as well. So we'll do that now, and we'll be back in a moment. So here we are after we've added the Agrax Earthshade, and we really helped the demon details stand out over here, as well as the skulls and the horns and things like that. So we get the detail there. We're going to move on to the detail in the metallics, and that's going to take a Nuln Oil, and we're going to do the armor plate, armor chainmail here, as well as all the tubing, this extra blade on the back here. So we'll do those now with our Nuln Oil, and we'll be back in a moment. So now that we're finished all of our shades, what we're going to do is start our highlight layers. So we'll start with the metallics, and we'll take a little bit of Ironbreaker, and we're going to brush that right across all of the metallics that are there. And we really only want a dry brush. Just add a little bit of highlight light back up to that. Just like that. So we're going to do that to all the cords, as well as all the vents and the blade, and we'll meet back here in a few moments. So this is our model after we're finished with the Ironbreaker, and as you can see, the metallics are quite shiny. They do stand out quite nicely here. So what we're going to do now is move on to the gold, and for that we're going to use a little bit of Liberator Gold, and we're going to use that to just dry brush over all of the demon and then the other 2 or 3 places that we've got the gold. So we'll do that now, and we'll meet back here in a moment. So here's our model now that we finished with the Liberator Gold, and as you can see, we've really brightened up the metallics as well, and we've definitely got a couple of tones darker and lighter here on top of the demon skull on the shoulder. So the only thing left to do with our highlight layer is we're going to do the horns, and with that we're going to use a little bit of Screaming Skull, and we're going to dry brush that on the horns. Make sure that's nice and dry. And then we're going to dry brush that right up on the horns here like so. Just going to lighten those up. As you can see, the two here now, you can definitely see the difference. So we're going to do that for all the horns and the spikes and the skulls and everything else around the model, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. Here's our model now that we finished with the Screaming Skull. We came around and we did a few more details around the model, and what we're left with now is the eyes themselves. And for that, we're going to take a little bit of Yriel Yellow. And with a very, very, very fine brush. And I try to pick out those 2 eye sockets there. Here's one. And there's 2. So there we go. So I might add a little bit of shade to that just to darken that up, but otherwise than that, we're doing pretty good. We're going to base it, and then we should be pretty much finished our model. So this is the finished model, and as you can see, we finished basing it, and we've clear coated as well for some protection. Anyway, if you like the way this looked, I'm pretty pleased with it. Feel free to leave a like or subscribe to the channel or leave a comment. Either way, good or bad. We tend to read them all. And otherwise than that, I hope you enjoyed this video and you guys enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you back at the next video that we tend to do.